Back to the Apex we go, fresh off the UFC 312 pay-per-view card. We got another middleweight main event. We had DDP versus Strickland last week. We had Adesanya Imavov the week prior. Now we got Cannonier versus Gregory RoboCop Rodrigues. Cannonier looks like he's on the way out. RoboCop has had all the talent for the longest time. Now it looks like he's surging. He's on a nice little streak. Should be a solid main event. And overall, the card is pretty decent. If you think about the pay-per-view that we just had, pretty low-level fights for those prelims. This Apex card pretty much stacks up to it. Obviously, we don't have the two title fights, but for an Apex card, it's not too bad. So I'm going to go through every single fight on this card. I'm going to give you my early lean, my early pick. This is without a lot of film study going into it, basically just looking at the matchups. What do we know about these guys? What do I think about the fight? Who am I leaning towards? And we can give some good insight based off of that. But before we do that, let's look at the recap of UFC 312. All right, we took some pretty bad L's on Tatiana Suarez, okay? It was not looking good. I mean, it looked great the first round. She got that takedown, and then it went pretty bad real quick. So I take that fat L on the chin. On the night for the straight bets and the parlays, I was down 3.88 units, which is obviously not great. But the DFS plays, once again, we cooked. We cooked again. Plus 5 units on the DFS plays. We hit 3 out of the 4 two-leg entries, so that equals 5 units of profit. And overall, we absolutely cooked them once again. So on the night, we were in the profit once again. So 4 cards into 2025 in UFC, we've been profitable every single week. So in 2025, we're positive 11.91 units. Obviously, the past 2 years have been good as well. So we're showing some pretty consistent profit there. So if you want to get my bets every single week, jump in the Home of Fight Picks Premium membership on Winnable. You can use code HeyJive right now, and you'll get a free trial so you can get the bets for this week. But let's get into the breakdown and the early leans for this card. First fight of the night right now is Gabriel Bonfim versus Khaos Williams. And this is a great matchup. This is one of these matchups that I look at and I'm like, okay, it makes a lot of sense. I think Bonfim's got a lot of talent. It's all about putting it together, not gassing out like he did against Nicholas Dalby. And Khaos Williams has been around for a while. We know he's got big power. Detroit guy. He's going to be the older fighter, more UFC experience, and, of course, he's got the death touch. So if these guys go ahead and swing it out in the middle of the octagon, then Khaos Williams is going to be looking like a live dog here. He is the underdog. The odds are not on the screen, but I got him in my head. I checked him out. I got him noted. Gabriel Bonfim, probably the more skilled fighter overall. I think his striking is really solid. He showed his last time against Angelo, so, the cardio wasn't bad at all. He was able to go the full distance and look great doing it. The grappling for Gabriel Bonfim is definitely something he's probably going to want to implement here against Khaos, who isn't the best grappler, but he's not really a guy that has had to use it all that often. I think this one just comes down to if Gabriel Bonfim is on his best game. If he's on his best game, I think he beats Khaos Williams. But Khaos can always knock you out. Khaos does have some pretty solid cardio. He's always had a great chin, so that's a great thing for Khaos. It's a really close one for me. And Bonfim's sitting around minus 200 right now, so I'm not super ecstatic about minus 200 on Gabriel Bonfim, but I do think he's the more well-rounded fighter. He showed he can go 15 minutes his last fight and do it pretty well. And I think Bonfim can probably win this fight. If he mixes in some grappling, he's probably going to look a lot better. If he goes out there and swings it out with Khaos, he's just giving him a chance to win the fight. So I'm going to take Gabriel Bonfim for my early lean here. I think the striking he can match. And if he doesn't get hit with a big shot, then he's good. We also got to take into account, Khaos does have some big power. Like he's had some nasty knockouts, but he just knocked out Carlson Harris his last time out. And we're like, oh, Khaos Williams, big knockout power is back. But Carlson Harris just got knocked out by Ponzinibbio too. So, it's not like Carlson Harris is some granite chin type of great striker. So Gabriel Bonfim's going to be the early lean for me. I'll take him to win this one at the Apex. So we move on to some women's MMA. Angela Hill, Katlyn Souza. This fight going the distance right here. All right. Maybe not, because we got Katlyn Souza, who is almost like a prototype of Jessica Andrade. Okay, she's going to throw a lot of big heat, a lot of big hooks. She's going to throw a lot of big power, and Angela Hill is probably going to be on her bike, popping the jab, popping the kicks, maybe even mixing in some wrestling, because her wrestling has improved over the years, even though she's 40. It finally took her until she was about 38 to improve her wrestling, but it has improved a lot. So Ketlen Souza is not the best grappler, and I think if Angela Hill does mix in some wrestling here, it would take off some of that pop that Ketlen Souza is going to come into this fight with. So maybe she wants to wrestle early and try to zap the gas tank a little bit from Ketlen, just so she's not as powerful. But, we're also talking about women's strawweights. So how big is the power? I don't know. And her knockout win, it wasn't a knockout, it was a knockout club and sub to Jauregui. Jauregui does not have the greatest chin, but she does swing hard, and her striking is decent. So Ketlen Souza definitely going to be the more dangerous fighter here, but I think over the course of 15 minutes, Angela Hill might just do more and get the decision victory. Now, we also got to take into account the judges have never liked Angela Hill. Okay, if this fight goes to a decision, then it's almost a coin flip. Whatever the judges like to see more. And a lot of times Angela Hill's not getting the nod. So, at 17-14, her professional record, a lot of those are going to a decision. A lot of those are split decision losses. This one, I think, could be another split decision. I'm going to side with Angela Hill right now. I think Ketlen Souza could definitely win if she lands the more impactful shots, but Angela Hill has always had good cardio. Her wrestling is improving. Her volume is off the charts. So I think she could win this fight, but again, comes down to the judge's decision. For me, it's probably not one that I'll be super invested in, but I'll take the early lean on Angela Hill right now. Moving on. Jared Gordon taking on Kawi Fernandes. Very weird matchup for me, because Kawi Fernandes, you look at the ranking there, number 104 lightweight worldwide, and Jared Gordon's ranked number 30. Did not expect this to be the matchup. I mean, Jared Gordon was kind of fringe top 20, top 25, and then he took the loss to Patty, which really wasn't a loss. Like, it really could have went to Jared Gordon. And then he has a no contest, picks up a win, and then another really close loss to Nasrat Haqparast. So he's been fighting the guys within the top 40, top 30 of the UFC, and now he's taking on a guy whose only UFC win is Muhammad Yahya. So it's very weird. But at the end of the day, rankings don't mean anything, because you're getting into a cage fight, and Kawi Fernandes does have some solid skills. I think his kicks from range are really nasty. His hands are decent. His grappling is decent. His loss in the UFC came to Mark Diakese, who has the ability to just get guys to the ground because he's so athletic. His wrestling is kind of like his takedowns are nasty, but he doesn't do anything with the takedowns. So he can get the takedown on you, hold you there, and then you're fucked. So that was his loss. I don't put too much stock into that, because Jared Gordon's not going to be shooting blast doubles and hold you onto the ground. He's going to probably want to stand and strike with you. And if he stands and strikes with Kawi Fernandes can have some success. But overall, I do think Jared Gordon's probably the better striker, cleaner boxer. If he doesn't get caught with big shots, if he could stay away from those big leg kicks from Kawi Fernandes, I think he wins. The age gap, I don't love, but I do think Jared Gordon could probably win this fight. I think there's probably levels to this. Kawi hasn't fought the level of competition that Jared Gordon has. Kawi's not a bad fighter, but he just, right now, I just don't really see it. So I'll take Jared Gordon for the early lean. And we can move on to the flyweights. Rafael Estevam taking on Jesus Aguilar. Jesus, probably one of the weirdest fighters. I don't want to say weirdest fighters you'll ever see, but like the way he wins fights is just like, what is going on here? Like a one-punch knockout over Shannon Ross, a split decision win over Mateus Mendonça, where not a lot happened in the fight. Like he was on his back for, I think, 8 minutes of that fight. He still won a split decision. And then his last time out, he cashed for me getting the sub against Stuart Nickel, where this dude is a guillotine merchant. Okay, he is just waiting for you to shoot a double leg on him so he can snatch that guillotine and just jump it. And it's nasty, because he's got those T-Rex arms, and if he gets those T-Rex arms around your neck, those things are strong. He's got a strong tug, and you're going to go out. So Estevam's definitely got to keep that in the back of his mind. If he wants to wrestle against Aguilar, you got to watch out for that gilly, because he is going to pull it. And Estevam got a win against Charles Johnson in his debut. I believe he missed weight for that fight, and he looked big. He got takedowns early. He won the first 2 rounds and then completely gassed out in the third, and Charles Johnson won the third by a long shot. Didn't do enough damage to really make it a 10-8, but it was clear like Estevam was death gassed at that point. But he got the win. It was 29-28 over Charles Johnson, who is surging right now. He's still undefeated. I think he's got a lot of good skills, but I think it's all about putting it together. You know, if he goes out here and tries to wrestle Aguilar, he could definitely get him down to the ground. He's got to watch out for the submissions. On the feet, Estevam's probably the better striker. Aguilar, T-Rex arms, not the best striker. But he is tough, and he is pretty durable. So Aguilar's going to bring the heart here, but I think the skills are probably more on the Estevam side. Very physical guy. He could get a ton of minutes on top against Aguilar. So I'm going to go with Estevam to win this one. He is a pretty sizable favorite. I think around high minus 200s or minus 300. And, Aguilar is probably submission or bust, in my opinion, in this fight, unless Estevam just gasses out again. But even then, Aguilar could probably finish a submission in round 3. So Estevam is the pick for me. Better fighter right now, and I'll take him. Walter Walker taking on Don'Tale Mayes. The battle of the brain deads right here, okay? Don'Tale Mayes, training partner of John Jones. And you would never guess it based on the way he fights, because there's no fight IQ. There's nothing going on up there. The guy is 6'6", decently athletic, decent power, but just never puts it together. Like, there's some potential there, but it just never happened. Like, you never see it. You're not like, there's no performance in Don'Tale Mayes' career where you're like, yeah, that was a great version of Don'Tale Mayes. Like, and when he's winning, it's like either he lands some lucky punch or he's just winning a greasy decision. And Walter Walker, on the other hand, obviously the UFC debut was disgusting. I mean, the guy got every takedown that he went for, but when he wasn't going for takedowns, he was losing striking exchanges to Lucas Bresky. And I actually picked Bresky to win that fight, which is just unbelievable to me that he actually beat Walter Walker. Walter Walker's striking is awful, but his takedowns are really solid, and his grappling is pretty solid. If he comes to this fight with a game plan of I'm going to take down Don'Tale Mayes, he wins. Because he can take down Don'Tale Mayes. Don'Tale Mayes is not hard to take down. He's 6'6". You get underneath that base, you're taking him down. And Walter Walker is a pretty big guy with solid top control. If he gets takedowns on Don'Tale Mayes, he will keep him there. So Walter Walker is going to be my pick, but it really just comes down to who's going to be the smarter guy in this fight. And I don't have faith in either of them to be smart in this fight. But I have to go off the skills and what I believe they can do. And I think Walter Walker should be able to get takedowns and win this fight. But then we also have to factor in that the idea that the UFC is telling these guys, if you go for takedowns or just hold them there and win fights based off of taking guys down, that you're going to get cut. So this is just the stuff that we got to deal with. But either way, I'm going to still take Walter Walker for the early pick. Moving on. Vince Morales taking on Elijah Smith, and here we go again. We got a Dana White's Contender Series fighter making his UFC debut as a favorite, a minus 220, minus 230 favorite over a veteran. I got to say, boys, Vince Morales might be live this week, okay? Because I bet on Elijah Smith and his Contender Series fight against that dude with the face tat, Aaron Tao. And I thought, Elijah Smith is just way more skilled than this Aaron Tao guy. And he showed it for the first 2 rounds. And then he gassed out. Now, I believe he took that fight on relatively short notice. So maybe that's why he gassed out. But I also don't think Aaron Tao is good at all. Like, he's a decent kickboxer, but he's very undersized. He doesn't really offensively wrestle. His defensive wrestling didn't look good. But maybe that's just because Elijah Smith is a really solid wrestler himself. He's a great athlete. I believe his father was a UFC fighter who didn't really do much, but he's got him training him. So there's that. He's 22 years old, so he's obviously going to be improving. You would hope so. And on the Morales side, I think Morales can win this fight based on being more active, stuffing takedowns, and putting a pace on Elijah Smith, because I don't think Elijah Smith can put a full 15 minutes together where it's just completely dominant. Like, I think if Vince Morales gives him some some pushback early on in the fight. Like Aaron Tao didn't push back at all in the first 2 rounds, really. Like he was just out there doing nothing. And Elijah Smith was picking him apart. But I think if Morales pushes back on Elijah Smith, pops the jab out there, maybe offensively wrestles himself, that he could tire Elijah Smith out and win this fight. So I'm tending to lean towards Vince Morales right now. His second stint in the UFC, he got matched up terribly in his second stint. Taking on Taylor Lapilus. Lapilus is really good, like a really good striker with really good takedown defense. That's just a nightmare matchup for Vince Morales. Now, Vince isn't like some amazingly skilled fighter, but he could put together a fight that could beat Elijah Smith. I laid it out. Push back early. Don't allow Elijah Smith to get downhill. Put the pressure on Elijah Smith. Make him go backwards. Mix in some takedowns. Pop the jab out there. Pop some low kicks. Stay away from the big shots. And I think Vince Morales could win this fight. And considering Elijah Smith making his debut, definitely not have fought a guy with the experience in Vince Morales. That's why I'm tending to lean towards Morales in this one. He'll be my early pick. Moving on. Julia Avila taking on Cavalcanti. And this one seems pretty straightforward. I mean, I didn't even know Julia Avila was still in the UFC. I thought she had been cut. She's probably going to be cut after this fight. And, she's 36. She really doesn't have that many pro fights. She's a grappler. Her striking is not very good. She's going to be at a significant range disadvantage in this fight. Cavalcanti is so good at keeping her range on these girls, poking the jab, hitting the 1-2s, hitting the leg kicks, circling. Avila is just not going to be able to strike with her whatsoever. Now, if Avila can get a takedown on Cavalcanti, then it gets interesting, but Cavalcanti's got 90% takedown defense. It's going to be tough to get inside the range to even attempt a takedown on Cavalcanti. So I think Cavalcanti probably just pokes her way to a victory here. I mean, she's very long and she knows how to use it. And when you have that type of movement, that range calculation, you're going up against a girl who doesn't have good striking and is pretty much just a grappler. It's Cavalcanti, all right? Cavalcanti's going to be the early pick. She's a big favorite, so I'm not saying anything too crazy there, but she'll be the pick. I think she wins this fight. Before we get into the main card, I'll gloss over the Home of Fight Picks premium membership once again. It's where you're going to get all my bets. I'm giving my early breakdowns here, but if you want my bets, use my code HeyJive on the Home of Fight Picks Winnable. You get a free trial. We're winning. Join up. If you need a sports book, Wager Attack is available in all 50 states. You get a 200% free play bonus. So when you deposit $1,000, you're going to get $2,000 in free play. You're going to get a 10% cash bonus if you deposit with crypto. So if you deposit $1,000, you're going to get $100 in cash bonus. Wager Attack, you can bet on UFC, whatever. They got a million different things. You can bet on cricket. You can bet on ping pong, whatever. But we're talking UFC here. That's what I use it for. So Wager Attack, link down in the description to sign up there. Easy deposits, too. I mean, you can deposit with Venmo, Cash App, crypto, obviously, PayPal, bank, credit card, whatever. It's easy. Very easy, and you can use it in all 50 states. So if you need a sports book, if you live in Texas, California, jump on Wager Attack. You can bet on the UFC there. To the main card, we got Adolfo Vieira taking on Andre Petroski, and I think this is a great matchup because I like Petroski going up against another grappler. I mean, Vieira is obviously one of the nastiest BJJ guys that the UFC has brought in, and it's an interesting matchup because Petroski likes to wrestle and Vieira likes to grapple. So if Petroski shoots a takedown on Vieira, he could probably get it, but does he stay safe? And then on the feet, we got really two grapplers striking it out. And I think Vieira's striking has improved. And Petroski has shown some durability issues, but Petroski probably has more power, and his striking is decent I would say better from range. Like Vieira's boxing is decent. Petroski gets a little bit sloppy when he's throwing his hands, but his kicks from the outside are really solid. So it's a very intriguing matchup for me. I believe Vieira is the minus 200 favorite in this matchup, or at least around there, which is a little bit rich in my opinion, because I think Petroski, if he can get takedowns on Vieira and stay safe, he'll probably rack up some top control. You just can't get swept, get put in a bad position, then he's going to get submitted. Like, Vieira he is nasty. If you allow that guy on top of you, he's going to work towards that submission, and it's like a slow death. But Petroski is a really solid grappler, wrestling base, but his jiu-jitsu is pretty solid. So I'm tending to lean towards the dog in Petroski here, but I'm really not too gung-ho about it. Like, I'm not really a guy that trusts Andre Petroski all that much. I think he's improved. His cardio has looked pretty solid in his last few fights. The durability, the hip knockout is just always going to be in the back of your mind. But it's not like Adolfo Vieira is going to be throwing big shots. He's a decent striker, but he doesn't really have big power. He wants to get the fight to the ground. The thing that I'm scared about for Petroski is, if he fails a takedown, Vieira ends up on top, then you're in trouble. Then you're in real trouble, and I think that's probably why Vieira is the minus 200 favorite. But for me, if I was going to look at it from a betting standpoint, I'd probably want to go with the Petroski side, or at least lean that way. So that's why I'm going to take him for the early pick. But one that I want to watch more film on, just see how Petroski does off his back. And, Vieira, he's nasty, but he's also 35. And, he hasn't really looked that great in the UFC. Like, his wins in the UFC just really aren't that good. His last win against Petrosian can't grapple at all. And, Petroski can grapple. So, Petroski's the early lean, but one that I want to look at a little bit more. Moving on. Eben Shahbazyan taking on Dylan Budka. More middleweights. We got Shahbazyan coming in here off the loss to GM3, where he, in classic GM3 fashion, Shahbazyan nearly deads him and then just gasses out, and GM3 takes over and submits him. That's the problem with Shahbazyan, man. Like, the guy doesn't have much heart. He's going to go out there in round one, try to take your head off, and if you're a low-level guy, he can usually do it. And maybe Dylan Budka is that low-level guy, but if Dylan Budka can get a takedown on Edmund early, then things get interesting. Because obviously, Budka can't strike with Edmund Shahbazyan. Shahbazyan's a much better striker, much more dangerous, and Budka's striking is terrible. But Budka is a decent wrestler, and if he gets a takedown on Shahbazyan early, how does Shahbazyan look in round two? Probably not the best. Probably going to be good for the first 2-3 minutes. But if Budka gets another takedown in round two, what happens? And I don't know that Budka has the best top control, so I think maybe Shahbazyan could probably get back up to his feet. He's not going to get taken down in the first round and give up, the full 3 or 4 minutes of when he got taken down. I don't believe, because I don't think Budka's grappling is that good. His wrestling's decent. But I think Shahbazyan's the much better fighter here. But he's not really the guy that you can really trust. He's a minus 280 favorite, somewhere around there. And I guess it makes sense skill-wise, but the cardio's not good. The takedown defense isn't amazing, but you do know that he's dangerous early. He's going to be the better striker, and Dylan Budka hasn't shown anything in the UFC to really like. So Edmund Shahbazyan's going to be my early pick. I think he could probably dead him in the first. But if not, Budka could maybe take over. But then again, what is Budka going to do with his takedowns? Not going to submit you. He's not a huge ground and pound guy. So, Shahbazyan could maybe even win a decision based on what he does on the feet in the second and the third round. Who knows? But Shahbazyan's going to be the early pick. Moving on. Jose Delgado taking on Connor Matthews. Now, I watched this Jose Delgado guy on the Contender Series. And when I was watching film on him for that fight, I was like, man, this guy is slick. This guy is really, really fluid, puts everything together. I believe he's kind of under the wing of Benson Henderson at the MMA Lab, which is really cool. He's got a big frame for the division, 5'11", 73-inch reach. He uses it really well. He could switch his stances, lots of knees, lots of kicks. His hands are solid. So I was like, this guy's pretty good. And he went out there and pretty much just put it on the guy that he faced on the Contender Series, finished him in round two. Connor Matthews, on the other hand, two-time Dana White Contender Series alum, got to win his second time, and he lost his debut to Dennis Bazookia. Got knocked out in the third. And Connor Matthews, a New England cartel guy, you kind of see it, man. He goes out there and he he tries to box with you. He tries to throw a lot at you, but then he gets hit with a lot. And it's not like his grappling is all that good. He has submission wins, but like the guys that he fought on the regional scene, they're terrible. They're literally free wins. And Delgado coming into the UFC, making his debut off the Contender Series, obviously that's a red flag. But he's like a minus 200 some favorite, and I think it's kind of warranted. Like when I look at their skill sets, I think Delgado is really levels above Connor Matthews in the striking. I think if he does get taken down by Matthews, which I don't really see Matthews shooting a takedown and landing it with like a lot of success, I think he can get back up. So I think Delgado's got this one, boys. I think he does. I'm not crazy about betting on a guy making his UFC debut here, but I don't really think too highly of Connor Matthews. He's not really a longtime veteran of the UFC. He's still relatively new to the UFC, and I think Delgado is just levels above him in the striking. So I think Delgado wins this one. I'll take him for the early pick, and we can move on to a lightweight bout here, which I think is a really solid matchup as well. A lot of great matchups on this card. Bonfim taking on Sadykhov. Great fight because Bonfim is a really solid striker who likes to be patient, likes to pick his shots. He likes a clean kickboxing battle. And Sadykhov is a guy that likes to turn it into a dogfight. And I think if Sadykhov can turn it into a dogfight, he could maybe prevail. But Bonfim is the more technical guy who is probably going to be hitting Sadykhov a little bit more than Sadykhov is hitting him. But Sadykhov, when he lands, he is nasty. He has an ability to cause a lot of damage, to hurt you, and he can mix in some wrestling. If he can mix in some wrestling here on Bonfim, then I think that increases his chances. This is a really close fight for me. Bonfim right now is, I think he's about a minus 145, somewhere around there. It kind of makes sense because I think Bonfim's a little bit better of a striker. But at the end of the day, this is a cage fight, and if Sadykhov goes out there and just turns it into a dogfight, then that pretty technical striking goes out the window. And Sadykhov is a durable dude that likes to bring the pressure and bring the fight to you. And he's a little bit bigger than Bonfim. I don't think he's not a big 155er. And we've seen BSD kind of brought the fight to Bonfim, and he just melted him, walked through. You know, he was ripping body shots on Bonfim with those kicks, and then took him down and submitted him. And I don't think Sadykhov is, a great submission grappler, but I do think if he brings the fight to him early and can mix in some takedowns, then Bonfim starts to, kind of panic a little bit because he likes that pretty technical kickboxing fight. So I'm going to lean with Sadykhov just because I know the guy's durable. I know he's going to bring the fight to you. And if he does that, I think he can have some success. So Sadykhov is going to be the early pick for me. We're taking the OV, baby. Can't go wrong. Moving on. Co-main event. Interesting matchup because two guys on just two completely different trajectories, and the odds are heavily in favor of Youssef Zalal. I think he's about minus 400 right now. Much younger. He's on a nice long win streak. He's looked great since coming back to the UFC. All wins by sub. 3 straight. I cashed on him twice, I believe, by sub. I think it was like plus 210 or something against Jarno Aarons, and then it was like plus 800 against Jack Shore. Really slick grappler, really slick striker, a guy that does not get hit a lot, uses a great footwork from the outside, circles around, picks his shots, doesn't allow you to get momentum from tagging him. And that's kind of what Calvin Kattar needs. Like, he needs the forward pressure to use his boxing, and his takedown defense is not good. His grappling is not good. And he's 1-4 in his last 5. So the writing seems to be on the wall. And I think I would be more cautious in Youssef if he didn't have like such a great fighting style of like, you're not going to hit me. I'm going to pick my shots. I'm going to mix in the grappling, and I have really solid submissions. Like, he has a great game to beat a lot of guys at 145 because he's not going to allow you to have success, and he's going to choose his moments of his success. And I think against Calvin Kattar, he's just going to do the same thing. He's going to use his footwork from the outside, kick him, level change, look for takedowns, look for the back, maybe even submit Cavalcanti again. You know, I think Youssef Zalal has this one. I just never been a huge believer in Cavalcanti. He's a guy that really needs you to stand in front of him and trade with him, or at least just be there in the pocket so he can use his boxing, use his jab. And Youssef Zalal is just not going to be there. He's just not going to be there for Cavalcanti to pop the jab, to look for the body shots, to look for the 1-2. Calvin's going to get frustrated, and Youssef Zalal is probably going to take advantage of it. So Youssef Zalal is the pick for me. And we can move on to the main event. Cannonier taking on Gregory RoboCop Rodrigues. And, you know, Gregory, he's always a wild card for me because the guy has like 3 knockout losses. But then you see him when he's not getting knocked out, and you're like, damn, this guy is like top 5 material. And that's what it is. Like, he's really skilled. He's a brick house for 185. 6'3", like just jacked to the gills. Looks like Barack Obama if he took steroids. And I think he comes in here if he can make it past the first 2 rounds against Cannonier, because I don't think Cannonier is going to have a ton to offer past the first 2 rounds. Like, he's always had solid cardio, but after the first 2 rounds, he's not as quick. Yeah, he starts to stumble a little bit. He's not taking punches as well as he once did. And at 40 years of age, it's not looking good for Cannonier. Okay, and I think if Gregory can mix in some wrestling here early to try to tire out Cannonier a little bit, make him work, gets into round 2, into round 3, that's where RoboCop can take over. Because Gregory does have really solid cardio for how big and swole this dude is. He has really solid cardio. And his striking is really good, keeps a high guard. It's just at times he doesn't move his head and he can get clipped with something. And I don't really see Cannonier clipping him with anything too big to where it can knock him out. But that is always a possibility with Gregory, because he's got a button. If you touch it, he goes down. But overall, right now, Gregory's got the momentum. Cannonier is almost 41. Has not looked good. He doesn't look like he's taking punches as well as he once did. Gregory's got the grappling advantage. And I think he could probably have a cardio advantage in this spot as well. It's just because Cannonier tends to slow down a little bit, get a little bit more hesitant, get hit a lot easier. So Gregory Rodrigues is going to be the pick for me. I think he gets it done. And that's the early picks breakdown for you. I appreciate you for watching. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll be back here throughout the week with the official picks, the Best Bets show, and the live show on Friday with Matty Betts, hearing your guys' long shots through the call in. Appreciate you for watching. Until next time, hey, Job Picks. We out.